We do see some parallels with the experience in the 1970s, but we do not use the term stagflation. We don't believe it's the right term to describe what we are observing in the global economy now. It's essentially, most countries have gone through 4 quarters of very strong growth. And yes, we have elevated inflation, and we expect elevated inflation to last for longer, but we do expect it to subside throughout the second half of 22 and to the end of 2023. As commodity price pressures, as commodity supply pressures ease, and indeed as monetary policy measures start to take effect, we do expect inflation to start easing, certainly by the end of 2023. So at this point, we readily concede there are a lot of downside risks, but we're not forecasting, we're not projecting a recession, and we do not at this point think that stagflation is the right way to describe what is currently taking place.
Sticking to inflation, you see very different situations in the US and in Europe. And of course, we have the ECB meeting tomorrow. They're expected to show the roadmap for them to start raising interest rates. So what do you think are the right steps for the ECB to take right now, given the complicated picture that they have in Europe with different types of economy? And what is the risk of a sharp increase in interest rates kind of actually suffocating a potential growth?
Well, firstly, both the Federal Reserve in the US and the European Central Bank have both telegraphed their future intentions very clearly. The Federal Reserve has taken some significant steps already, and indeed, the European Central Bank has been taking steps, obviously winding down their asset purchases and also signaling the pathway to obviously a rising of interest rates. We're very confident that central banks in the US, in Europe, and more broadly will continue to make the decisions that are required to get inflation back under control and to keep it in the target range within an appropriate time frame.
With governments focusing first on the COVID crisis, now on this crisis, you say, what's the concern of they actually taking their eyes away from some key structural challenges like aging population, like, again, the global net zero target by 2050? How much is that put aside now while these governments are dealing with this pressing crisis right now?
Well, the world has experienced 2 very substantial external shocks. One in a 100-year pandemic with very severe economic and social consequences, and indeed this Russian war of aggression against Ukraine also with very significant consequences. And this is creating a series of short-term pressures, and it does mean that governments around the world need to take steps, for example, to protect vulnerable households. And what we do need to make sure, though, because all of these structural challenges, like the need for a green transition to get to carbon neutrality by 2050, the need to optimize digital transformation, the need to make sure we appropriately manage the implications of the aging population, they all remain with us. And we need to make sure that the short-term, or the decisions that we make to deal with short-term pressures don't make it unnecessarily harder for us to deal with some of our medium to long-term challenges. And that is why we're making specific recommendations, in particular in the way support should be provided when it comes to the increasing prices of energy.